Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sally Swift.
Thank you. They never let me out.
So at the end of every show, we say, and our managing producer is Sally Swift. Actually, no, it's Sally Swift is our managing producer.
Yes.
And
we vary that.
that keeps it interesting. But really, what's not obvious, I think, to the listener, is Sally is not just the managing producer. She is, as much as Lynne, the mother of this show.
Don't cry.
Lynne and I aren't looking at each other tonight. We're just...
Yeah, this seating was really great, because they're going to look at each other, they're going to cry. It's going to make for great, great entertainment. No, but the show actually started after the publication of the Splendid Table, of the book. And there was a producer who read the book, had heard about Lynne, and thought, hey, I'm going to reach out to her and see if she wants to do something on the radio about food. And that person was Sally. So Sally, I actually don't know this. Why'd you do that?
Needed a job. No. Why did I do that? Actually, that's a really hard question, Francis. I loved food. I was a producer. I was working in television, doing pretty bad TV, actually. Talk shows in the the height of talk shows, daily talk shows. And I had a child, and suddenly wasn't interested in doing that production work any longer, and had gotten the Splendid Table. And when I was in college, I waited tables. I loved food. I get this book, and it was unbelievable. It was absolutely everything that I loved about food, because for me, as Lynne talked about earlier, it's a hand. It all opens up. And I got the book, and I read. It's a big book, and I read it. I read it from cover to cover. And then I saw Lynne on Frugal Gourmet, and she was utterly charming. And called her. Found out she lived in St. Paul. Picked up the phone, called her. She was a little snotty. Because she had won both she was the first person to ever win both the James Beard Award and the Julia Child Award for her book, which was amazing, and just, yeah. And we met for lunch, and, well, what was lunch like?
Well, I remember my side of this. This is one of those split screen things, I think. After the book won both those awards, there were several flavors of the month, last 10 minutes. And I love theater. I did a lot of theater, and I thought it would be great to do TV. And I was approached by producers. And every time I explained that it was going to be about the book, and I said, I've written a book about 500 years of eating, about the romance of the Renaissance, of history, this could be really the kind of thing that if Jim Henson, who produced the Muppets, if you had Steven Spielberg, which would be the movie side. The idea is you have so much imagination you can play with here. You could do kind of a little time traveling thing. And it would just be, no, people won't pay for that. And then the other part of it was, and by the way, we think you're brilliant and you're going to be a star. And when you raise the money, we'll spend it for you. So I was getting very cynical about it. And Sally called and said, what would you think about doing a radio show about food? And quite frankly, my first reaction was, oh, no, not another one. And I tried not to be rude. But as I sat over that lunch, I realized, my God, she's thinking about food the way I've been thinking about food, that it has all of these dimensions. And she'd read the book, and my God, she cooked from it. I mean, this thing is 518 pages, for God's sake. And so we started to talk. And because of your connections, we ended up getting the attention of Minnesota Public Radio. Mm-hmm. And they gave us a trial shot, as I recall, right? We
did that 4th of July special. We were both paid, I think, $80 each. And
oh, no, you got more than I did.
No, and...
we never talked about that,
right.
Did we? Yeah,
yeah, and we were off. And kind of made it by benign neglect, I would say. We were low enough and cheap enough that we just kind of kept going. Jennifer Russell, who is here tonight, who is, yeah, you all know her. She was our first hire. My ex-husband, Tom Vagley, was the reason we really had NPR take a flyer on us, a very accomplished and amazing producer. So on his good name, NPR kind of let us go.
Yeah.
What do you think the show was going to be?
Well,
I mean, not
brilliant.
in terms of success.
We
but
thought we were going to be brilliant.
But no, but what did you want to do? Like, the show has evolved so much over the years, in the early days.
Well, you know what? It hasn't evolved all that much from the early days. It's kind of interesting. I mean, we were always really interested in the same things that we've been covering now. I mean, people could not get over the idea of doing food on radio. Program directors were like, "What? You know, what are you going to do?"
It's going to be recipes. You're going to
be talking about
recipes,
which we didn't have any desire to do. We were the first show at NPR to start with a website, which I hated because it was a beast I had to feed every week on top of everything else. And of course, that website is what kept us going for the longest time, because guess what? People wanted recipes. And so we got this whole other dual audience going.
And we were talking about, you know, you hate to say you think you might be the first, but the reality is we were not in a lecturing kind of way, but in that idea of come on along, this is kind of an interesting trip we're taking here. We were first to talk about local and sustainable and organic before it was, you know, the watchwords. And not because it was the only way to go, but because this was important to think about. There were changes going on, and we wanted to look at food from all these different points of view. And I remember we had, I mean, there were some humorous pieces that were done. I remember Bick Skakill.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had been here. He had gone to LA to become a screenwriter, and he took a little time for him to become a screenwriter. So he would do these bits for us, and one of the bits that he did was talking about being raised here in the Midwest, and that his family was diametrically the opposite of eating healthy. Everybody ate sugar and whatever, and then there was the aunt who had 2 children who would come and lecture them that they were all going to die, you know, they were going to become criminals and whatever. And he said, well, you know, they were eating you know, Pop-Tarts and popcorn. You know, they were eating a lot of fast food and that kind of thing. And she would, you know, oh my, you can't do this. And I think he ended it by saying that his cousins, now they were all grown up, I think one was in rehab and
one was in prison.
Yeah, and the other one was walking around in a shopping mall in a chicken suit.
Right, that's right.
Yeah. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of that, basically.
Judgment-free, Lynne Rossetto Kasper's specialty.
Yes.
Always
But it was just, he did it beautifully. You know, it's the kind of thing that you find yourself collapsing and laughing.
One of the real different things, I mean, when we started the show, we did it live because it's a really inexpensive way to do it. And it was pretty amazing. We had some pretty amazing experiences. Scary. We had no audience early on, so we had handfuls of friends that would call us every single Saturday on demand.
It was a live call-in show.
Yep, with no call-ins.
No one knew existed.
Exactly. You got it. That's exactly right. So I just scheduled callers. I had a girlfriend who's Jewish who would call. She'd go in the cloakroom of a synagogue and get on her cell phone and call in. I mean, it was total commitment.